What's going on, everybody? Anon here, and I want to talk about a somewhat controversial topic. And I've been thinking about the best way to present this for a while now. Um, but before we do that, I just want to go to Discord real quick and just point this out. This is phenomenal, and if this doesn't mean that we're a little toppy, I don't know what does. But it's Cheetazard. So it is a Cheeto shaped Charizard. But anyway, I thought that was funny. Going back to everybody dislikes, strongly dislikes, straight up hates hyper rare gold cards. And I agree. The art and the lack of background in the card isn't as good as special illustration rares. Now that being said, quite honestly, some of them don't have background art. It's just kind of like a weird shiny, whatever. But I'm going to make this video really as a discussion point because ultimately there's a significant disparity in the value of your special illustration rares versus your hyper rares. It's obviously not related to the rarity, because in a lot of situations, the hyper rares are slightly more rare than the special illustration rares, and in other instances, they're not. And some sets like Temporal Forces, it's almost a wash. And I'll get into the numbers here shortly, but I just want to go through the list very quickly because I think, other than the fact that the demand isn't there, and there's no need to comment and say, well, the cards are ugly, that's why I want the special illustration rare versus hyper rare. That's obvious. That's like, no kidding. So let's go through the list here really quickly. So what I did was I just filtered on special illustration rares, hyper rares. Obviously, these are only Scarlet and Violet. I took out the Paldean Fates because those cards are really, really ugly. And they're quite honestly not the same. I also filtered out the hyper rares and prismatic evolutions. Same situation. I think they're kind of butt ugly. And then 151 has some, but they don't have the special illustration rare that matches the hyper rare. There is one Enshrouded Fable, the Petrant, but we'll go through that. So very quickly, I have this sorted on alphabetical. So it's really easy to see the total population. And I'll blow through this because I do want to get to Excel, and I want to talk through some of the math and the concepts behind it. So you have the Alolan Executor here, obviously much different price for Surging. Blood Moon Ursaluna. I mean, the art doesn't compare. I get that. The Charizard, I mean, it's effectively the same sort of kind of art in a much different price. Now it's inverted, but whatever. Sheen Pao, we have that one there from Paldea Evolved. Yeah, the Garchomp EX, obviously the SIRs go nuts. The gold card has not moved. Huge disparity. Gouging Fire from Temporal. Similar situation. Quite honestly, the art's whatever. But the Garchomp is effectively the same art because there's not a whole lot of background in the SIR. So some of these it's obvious, some of them they're not. Iron Boulder, whatever. Iron Crown, again, the background here is kind of crappy in my view, in my opinion. Temporal or Iron Leaves here, Iron Valiant, and these are the least demanded. Hyper rares are the Temporal Forces ones, generally speaking. Rhydon. These are actually probably my favorite gold cards. And I mean, the Koraidon EX is like $5, and the Miraidon is $6. So, I know there's a bunch out there, but these aren't that. I mean, and the art's totally different than the SIR. Meowscarada, same situation. Not a huge card. Petron, this is an interesting one because it looks like this one got hit by a buyout. So, I'll touch on it, but we'll disregard it for the analysis. The Pikachu, obviously this is the highest priced by far. You got the Quaxaval from Paldea Evolved. Raging Bolt, this is probably the most surprising one because you have the SIR at $100 and the hyper rare at 20, 18. And yes, this card is really cool art, but this one is not terrible. I don't think it's an $80 difference in price for me, especially since it's a super playable card. Roaring Moon, another one that, not a fan of the art. Skeledirge, this is actually kind of cool. but it's certainly not anywhere close to the SIR. Two Mask Ogerpon actually sells pretty well, and the regular SIR not that much different. The Terapagos, I mean the SIR, there's a lot going on in the background that you don't have with the gold version, which I think the gold version is kind of cool. Again, a huge price disparity, 85 versus $20. And then we'll touch on the last two. Tinglu, not in demand at all. And Walking Wake, it's okay, but it's not nearly as nice as the regular SIR. So let's go to the math here. So what I did was I logged all of the cards here in column A, the SIR price and the EX price. And oops, this is the hyper rare price. Sorry. So what I did was I calculated the multiplier. So this is effectively the multiple of the SIR price divided by the hyper rare price. So effectively, how much the SIR is valued more than the hyper rare. So it gives you a good idea of what hyper rares are undervalued, or potentially the SIR is overvalued. And we go all the way down. You can see the patch front. Like I said, there was a buyout here. The hyper rare is actually selling for more than the SIR right now. Teal Mask Ogerpon, same deal here. There's a lot of these, but it looks like the gold version has a little bit of demand. So then I rolled another set, the nominal dollar variance, and then just the variance percentage over this. So, if the hyper rare was to match par with the special illustration rare, what would the return be on the hyper rare? And you're talking for Rory Moon, 771%. Again, the art of the card's kind of crappy. In fact, it's kind of crappy for some of these temporal forces. But for example, Raging Bull, there's no reason why this card's not sitting at $40, $50, $60, for example. So then what I did was I went to the actual pull rates. And again, these are the pull rates as laid out from TCG Player. Obviously, we don't know what the exact pull rates are, but these are sort of kind of close enough. So let me just sort this very quickly on set. I guess it doesn't really matter. But what's interesting, so for Paradox Rift, so Paradox and Stellar is a super small set. Paradox and Obsidian. What's interesting is the specific SIR is much more difficult to pull than the specific hyper rare, because there aren't a whole lot of hyper rares in the set. And then this is just to pull A and SIR is 1 in 47, one hyper rare is 1 in 82. So, you can see these numbers aren't great. Now, what's interesting with Paldea Evolved, specific SIR is 1 in 480, so pretty easy to pull. And specific hyper rares is 1 in 8 or 508, but any special illustration is 1 in 32, and hyper is 1 in 57. So what's interesting is Paldea Evolve, Surging Sparks, and Shrouded Fable. And again, this one's crazy with these pull rates. I had to check 3 times to make sure these were correct. But the ratio of hyper rare to SIR, there's actually fewer hyper rares per card than special illustration rares, which is interesting. And then you look at the temporals; these are effectively par. Paradox, there's way more hyper rares than SIRs, and then Stellar Crown as well, because it's a pretty tiny set. And then you have SV Base, which is close to par, and Twilight Masquerade, and you have two Mask Ogerpon and the Blood Moon Ursaluna from Twilight Masquerade. So the reason I put this out here is I kind of want to have a discussion with with the audience here about, we obviously know why the gold cards in general aren't as highly demanded as the special illustration rares. But for example, in an instance, and again, I'll point to the Guard Shop. Why is the illustration rare worth 5 times more than the hyper rare? Because the SIR doesn't really have a background, and obviously the gold version doesn't have a background, and I understand that the SIR has been getting a little bit of a buyout, but there's some of these, and I think there's a strategic approach where the hyper rares for some of these cards are super undervalued. The Terapagos, for example, the Raging Bolt. I mean, again, I think the Raging Bolt should be at least a $40 card, so double where it's at right now. It's not terrible, and it is as rare, effectively 1.02, as the special illustration rare. And again, the fact that it's so rare, it still doesn't. I think the reason why people are buying it is because there's just a general malaise or a sense of there's not a whole lot of value in gold cards. But quite honestly, I think at some point in time might change. Now, I don't think it's going to change across the board for some of the reasons we've already spoken about, but it might change for some of the cards. Again, I think the Raging Bolt is a good example. Garchomp and Terapagos are a good example. You get down to this, Gouging Fire's okay. Skeledirge, look, if Paldea Evolve goes nuts, that's not a terrible card. The Pikachu is what it is. But then, you look at the Miraidon, Koraidon, $5 and $7. Now the multiplier is starting to get light because the actual cards themselves in SIR aren't worth a whole heck of a lot. But there's opportunity there. The Alolan Executor, you're still 3x on the SIR versus the hyper rare. And then you look at the Charizard, and here it's just it's 2-to-1, right? So you're $24 on the hyper rare, $50 on the SIR. And it's kind of to be expected because it is a Charizard and there's really no background in the SIR. But I would love to hear people's opinions on this. And don't just say, hey, gold cards suck. That's not super valuable. But again, I think that from a selective approach, there is some value in HR and some of the gold hyper rares. And I just think of it as, throwing the baby out with bathwater, right? So anyway, just want to walk the data, everybody through the data, and have a live discussion. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join the Discord. I mean, we talk about this stuff all the time. Just, how do we get an edge? Is there a way to get an edge? Is there not? Obviously there's hundreds of thousands of these cards, or at least tens of thousands of most of these cards. Probably not hundreds of thousands, but certainly tens of thousands. So anyway, guys, have a good evening, and we'll talk soon.